Hi, Rob here from Way Out West. A couple of weeks ago, I had the absolute pleasure of having a chat with the legend himself, Mr. Brian Cadd. Brian shared some incredible stories from his magnificent career. We are stoked at Way Out West to tell you all that Brian and his band will be at the club on Thursday, the 22nd of August. This is one gig not to be missed. Book a ticket now at www.wowrootsmusic.com or at the door on the night. So sit back and enjoy what is an insightful interview with one of this country's finest artists. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and always rock on, my friends. So many thanks, Brian, for taking the time to have a chat with me. It is really an honour, actually. So thank you. Let's go way back when you first got involved with bands. I really want to hear about how the group came about, and that's when you really started your songwriting career too, is it?
Yeah, it is. I started, I was in a band called the Jackson Kings, and we were, Ronnie Charles was in the band with me. And we had a couple of singles out and stuff that no one wrote songs back then, and certainly not me. Anyway, then the group who had already had hits with their previous lineup lost a couple of them who just decided they wanted to take their girlfriends and go to swinging London, and so the rest of the group went shopping for players, and we'd been on Columbia at that stage with them, and so we'd done a few shows with them, so they poached Ronnie and me, which didn't do the other band much good. But the deal was that we had to be professional, we had to be full time, which we hadn't been, which my father clocked right off when I did, like most fathers did. And I was absolutely thrilled to actually do for a living what I loved most. And the other thing was that they were all still signed to Columbia, and Columbia was the A&R guy was about to come down and listen to new material because they wrote their own stuff. So in actual fact, I'd never written a song. So anyway, the songwriters who were songwriters divided up into their team, which left me with the drummer who'd also never written a song and had trouble with his writing his name, but we were stuck. So we went to the rehearsal room and we're sitting there and we thought, well, what do we do? What do we do? And I swear this happened. And he's just sitting there being a drummer, they can't stop hitting. So he starts going, just fooling around just because it was, and for some unknown reason, I went ding, 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 ding. And we looked at each other and we played that for about 3 minutes without going into it. And we realized that if we thought about this, there were no rules, so why not? Yeah. Anyway, we finished the song, and then the bloke came down from Sydney, and he said, "Oh, okay, give me the songs." So they played the songs that they had, and then said, "Any more songs?" And we sort of said, "Oh, well, we've got one," and we played him our one, and it turns out that he just looked at us and said, "That's a single," which, considering it, both of us, neither of us had ever written a song before. And then when it got top 10 around Australia, I was like, come on, how long has this been going on? I'm doing this. Yeah. It took me a while to get another one, but the truth was that it was a perfect time to start writing, because back then songs were very simplistic. They were nothing more than nursery rhymes a lot of the time. There was no real depth. Yep. I love you, you love me, let's go to the drive-in. It was about the depth he went to. So it was an ideal time to do that stuff. And then I had Such a Lovely Way after that. And things sort of progressed onwards from there.
Do you still see Ronnie Charles? I've seen him. I go to a few Debonair's lunches for support act every now and then, and I'm sure I've seen Ronnie Charles there.
Oh yeah, yes. I see him when I go to Melbourne every now and again. He'll come to one of the shows, or I'll go and watch him or whatever. And we do also, on occasion, run into each other at the Debs, although I haven't been for a while now. But and he does great. He's in a band called Substitutes with Now I'm going to have to push my luck.
Yeah, yeah,
Smith
yeah. I know the
from,
substitutes. Yeah, they've played at the old Williamstown RSL. They used to play regularly on a Saturday, pulled a big crowd.
and here's that guy that I'm trying to think of. His second name is Smith, Barry Smith. Yes, and he was in the Town Cry. So then that was the same era as us. So the two of them are still in harness and still doing it. It's great. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason any of us should stop unless we can.
Well, speaking of that, the iconic Axiom was Australia's foremost band. Do you still have a chat to Glenn Shorrock or?
Oh, have a chat to him. We go on the road all the time. We just came off a couple of shows in Adelaide last week, and in about I don't know a couple of months we'll be at the Palms in Melbourne, and then later on the year we'll do Twin Towns. We don't do that many shows, and the reason for that is because when we get together, we've been friends for 60 years, and when we get together, it's really two naughty old boys who can't do any of the things they thought they could, or that they used to. But we have a lovely time trying, and it's a lovely show, and we just make fun of each other, which is not the sort of thing you can do week after week. It all wears out. But the fact that we only do it a couple of times a year is real fun. So I see him a lot. I see Stockley a lot. And I think that's about it, really.
Yeah.
But I do see the two of them a lot.
Ronnie Tudor had the incredible Fable label, and then the Bootleg label came after that. The Bootleg Family Band flew on from that. Was the Bootleg Family Band a nod to Leon Russell's Shelter People?
Oh, yes. A not too subtle nod, I might say. Well, he and not so much him, but Cocker was one of the biggest influences on me when I finally got to sing a song, which incidentally wasn't until after Axiom. I never sang lead until Show Me the Way. But I used to love him, and there was a few other people I really liked. And I really liked the idea of the a band that went on the road, as a sort of a family, and they were the best at it and the first at it. Anyway, so when the Bootleg Family happened, it was originally just a bunch of players that used to come in and play on all the records, kind of like Muscle Shoals or Memphis, like that kind of family thing. That, and I think the Wrecking Crew were doing the same thing in Los Angeles. Anyway, but Leon Russell had the best version of that. And then when we had our act started to sell records, it started to be in the charts and that, we decided we were going to take the whole label on the road, which was a pretty brave thing to do. There's a lot of lunatics per square foot. Yeah. But we did, and we fashioned this one band, which we called the Bootleg Family Band. And they were, in essence, the people that were on all the records anyway, and some lovely gals who were on most of the records. So it wasn't much of a step to get out of the studio and in the van, so to speak, in the bus. And we did that for quite a number of years, and we played all kinds of places everywhere, including America. We went to America, and we were on.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that shortly. Also, not only you're a fabulous musician, you've also wrote many film scores. Now, how did you get to write the Alvin Purple theme? Because that film had a lasting impression on me, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I bet it did. There's a lot of stories, only a few of which I can tell, but it was absolutely how original, how new it was for the time. When I can't get any of my kids or grandkids to even watch it, they doze off. But back in the day, it was pretty exciting stuff. And we do a routine about it on stage. Yeah. But the fact was that it was made by a real renegade film company headed by Tim Burstall. And they didn't really know what they were doing because they'd only ever done commercials and stuff, but they'd said, oh, yeah, we'll do this. We love it. It's such an insane thing. And, they had some beautiful actresses, and more specifically, Jackie Weaver and a couple of those people, and Chris McQuaid, and they were absolutely stunning. And, of course, the rule was that back in those days, Well, you couldn't show anything from the waist down, but by gosh, you could show it from the waist up, which they did at every opportunity. But Bertha was he was such a hustler. He was wonderful, wonderful. And I remember at one stage when the film had been shot and they'd assembled it and edited it, I got this call from him and he said, now, Caddy, I need you to do the score. And because it was that time, that cowboy era, I just said, yes, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Not having a clue how to do the score. So we go in and we're sitting in the cutting room, with the monitors, and he's about to play me the film. And he said, this is the spotting session. And I went, oh, yeah, it's not having a clue what that meant. So I pulled out my pen and pencil, and he said, because back in those days, there was no SMPTE, which meant that you couldn't put a SMPTE address and say, that's exactly where we want the door shut or whatever. It was pretty much by sight, Anyway, so he said, when I tell you, just write down what I tell you.
Yeah.
So we get to the first, don't even get through the credits, and there's something happens in the credits. He said, see, now when that happens, see right there when that happens, I want you to do a wah wah. Right? No explanation about what a wah wah was. I chose not to push it because it was only the first one. And then a minute or so later, he goes, now see, look, when the door shuts, right there, when the door shuts, I want to wah wah there. And right then I realized that he didn't have any more of an idea how to do this than I did. So we happily went through it, and I wrote down all the wah wah parts. And then I got to do what I wanted to, which was a fabulous thing to do. I had the best time up until then, probably the best time of my life doing that film.
And also The Morning of the Earth, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, Tamim Shud they were one of my favourite bands going way back.
That's right. And they were, oh yes, everyone's, but they were very much Northern Beaches, Sydney at that stage. And oddly enough, they discussed with Tamim Shud to do the soundtrack. And then they realised as it went on, it was sort of broader than that, or they wanted it to be broader than just one act. So then they found G. Wayne Thomas was at that stage in A&R and Warner's who were doing the soundtrack. And so he's a great player. Anyway, so he did all the damage he could do in Sydney. And then when he realised he still needed a whole lot more stuff, called me and he said, I'm coming down, get a studio, get all of great musicians and put them in there. We've got a week to do this, and whatever it was. And we really wrote a lot of the stuff as we went.
Yeah.
And so whatever there was that wasn't already in the soundtrack came to fruition there in Melbourne. And I didn't think about it, surf film, God. Yeah. Anyway, it became not only a great big success in Australia, but it was a big, big success internationally. Yeah. And many years later, I was in the Valley in Los Angeles, my then young son, who was a bit of a surfer, and we saw this big surf store. And we went in and surfboards for days, and he was just beside himself. And I wandered over, and in the centre of the store was a table, with glass over it so you could see in. Yeah. And apart from a lot of the other records and all those sort of things, there was a section there that just had soundtracks, right? And Morning of the Earth was there in the middle. And there was a young bloke there, and I said, so that's pretty good. He said, oh, yeah, they're the top 10 soundtracks of all time.
Wow. I
said, really? And he said, yes. I said, well, do you know any of them? And I said, yeah, I know a bit about The Morning of the Earth. He said, oh, that one. Everyone loves that. That sort of epitomizes a surf soundtrack album. And I couldn't even say anything. I said, oh, thank you very much, and walked away. And I never said that I was involved, but I couldn't wait till I could get back and call Tim and say, you're not going to believe it. So a great girl.
And did I read right to say that you were once asked to join the Bee Gees?
Yeah, the Bee Gees band.
Yeah.
Which was the same thing in that time. They'd been out in Australia, New Zealand, and I'd just come back from America and I didn't know what I was doing. I just came back from England. And I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, and I was just sort of hanging around. And Russell rang me. He said, listen, I'd be nice to do the opening spot for the Bee Gees in the Australian tour in New Zealand. If you don't do anything, do you want to come and play piano and we'll have some fun? So, we've known each other since we were kids, really. And so I loved it. The idea was fabulous. I got to know them and everything. And at the end of the tour, I fly back to Melbourne and they're in Sydney saying goodbye to everyone, and the phone rings. And it's the guy who's the head of, I forget who the head of the band then was. So he rings me and he says, now listen, I've talked about it with the boys and with everyone, and we'd really love it if you could join the band. You'd have to come to England and live in England. Excuse me, but we do tour all around the world, so it's a lot of fun. You'll like it. I'm thinking it was the Bee Gees. But just before that, a day before that or something, Ron Tudor had said to me, come on board, do your own album and sign whoever you want to sign, we'll form a new label. Yep. And it was like, what am I going to do? I can join the Bee Gees, which would be a thing around the world, or I could try my own thing.
Yep.
So, that's what I did, and thank God I did. It's been a lovely ride. Yeah. But I was always thrilled that I almost became a Bee Gee.
Now, not only have you done so many things, but a lot of your songs have been recorded by people like Ringo Starr, Joe Cocker, Glenn Campbell. That must give you a buzz. And also, with regards to Glenn Campbell, he's such a fantastic songwriter himself.
Oh, that was a big thrill. In fact, he recorded Let Go. It's been about 60 versions or something of Let Go around the world, and including not once, but twice, #1 in South Africa, both times in Swahili.
Wow.
So if you're really lucky, you'll get to hear that. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was, someone called and said, now, Glenn Campbell's thinking of doing Let Go, which I was surreal because I was such a fan. They said, it's a new album, we'll see how it goes, as they always do. Yeah. And it turned out that was that monstrous album. Yeah. Now I can't think of what it was, but you probably know anyway.
We'll find it.
It was his biggest album of all time at that point. In fact, I think of all time. And it was on there and it came out as a single. And it was such a great version of it too. I was very, very happy with that one.
Yeah. We mentioned before that you did live in the States for some 6 years and work. How tough is it for an Aussie to get into that market over there?
Well, it was very tough back in those days. Tougher even earlier when Axiom should have always gone to America. Should never have gone to England. I mean, we went to England, we said, we're a country rock band. They said, what's that? Really, in effect. Whereas at that time in America, there was the Flying Burritos and Birds and, all those gorgeous country rock bands. But it was impossible to get in. Even if you got in, you couldn't stay there because there was no permanent residency that you could get or anything in those days. And it was so easy to go to England. But if we had have gone there, I reckon Axiom would have had a great road, would have done well. And anyway, but it was very difficult. And even when I went to America, I was signed by Capitol Records. And even if that was the case, that wasn't necessarily everyone at Capitol Records thinking it was a great idea. I can remember, this is absolutely true, I can remember when I first got there and went into Capitol and meeting all the people, and they said, oh, the head of international's coming by. You'll love him, he's great. So in due course, he came into the room and shook my hand. He said, oh, God, he said, it's so great to have someone like you from such a wonderful place. He said, I really love it there. He said, as a matter of fact, I love absolutely all of Scandinavia.
Oh, God.
It was absolutely stunning because what he obviously thought I was from Austria.
Yeah, that's right.
But I thought, I don't think this bit's going to go too well. Anyway, but what happened was I was very lucky. Once again, the songwriting stepped in, and I had a couple of albums with Capitol, and they didn't do anything. Yeah. But at that time, I started to take off as a songwriter, and so that for the next 20 years really was what I did. If I came back to Australia, I'd make an album or whatever, But in America, I was a songwriter and moved to Nashville, all that.
So that country rock thing now, it's sort of the Americana thing, isn't it, really? All
Oh,
under that umbrella.
I know, and it sort of amazes me that you find young people, come up to you and they go, "This new Americana stuff, I'm really into that. I'm thinking of forming a band."
Yeah,
And I don't want to tell them that I was in the Flying Burritos, or I don't want to tell them that it was going around when I was 20 years old.
that's right.
But that's true, and I think that changed music, really.
Yeah, yes, yes. Now, in 2007, you were inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame. That another big milestone for your career.
Oh, it was lovely. And
Acknowledgement.
it's a fabulous award because it is from your peers.
Yeah.
So it's not one that, I mean, it's wonderful to win a King of Pop. Not that I don't think I ever got King of Pop, but it's wonderful to win those that are, based on audience voting and things. That's gorgeous. But there was something really special after a pretty long career to have your fellows vote for you to get into the Hall of Fame. That was real special for me.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful night that I almost remember.
Yeah. Now, Little Ray of Sunshine is one of my favourite songs. I think that song still means as much to a new parent back then as it does to new parents today.
Yeah, I've been so blessed with that song. It's really wonderful. The journey that took me on, and when I wrote it wasn't about that. I didn't really. I wrote it actually about a set of circumstances, not to do with me, but some real close friends. And it was a celebration of the little baby, right? And it came out and it was a hit, and then the years went by, and every time I play it or every time I go outside after the show and I'm talking to people, there's never been a time when somebody has not come up to me and said, that Little Ray of Sunshine, when our little Gloria was born, we were just coming out of the hospital and it came on the radio. So now I have this theory that there's a secret radio network that only plays outside of maternity wards, and it only plays that song because the coincidence is just too extreme. Anyway, I'm very thankful for that, and if it means, and I can tell it does, because when I play it on stage, when I look down in the audience, I can see a couple, and maybe they're in the 50s or 60s, but when the song starts, they look at each other and smile, and know that they're remembering when their little girl came along. So that's a very special thing for a songwriter. I'm very, very happy with it.
Also, you've produced a lot of people. Two of my favourite artists being Dutch Tildes and Hans Poulsen. Hans Poulsen was a great singer and songwriter. I mean, he should be better known in Australia, I think.
Yes. And a lot of that was to do with himself, only because he was not a brave kind of person, his version of life was sitting around and writing some great songs and going in and recording them, not going on extensive tours for years and years and years, which if he had, he would have been much more high profile. And he was also plagued a little by, ill health and stuff. So he wasn't necessarily fit all the time to do that. But I agree with you. I think he's one of the most unsung talents we've had. There's a few like that, but he had most of it going on. He was a good singer and a good player, and he wrote really commercial songs, folk kind of pop folk songs, at a time when pop folk, which is not easy to say, when pop folk was really monstering up and down the charts all over the world. So the chances are that he could have really done some amazing things also overseas, which he never tried.
Yeah. When was that song? Is it Boom Shalala?
Boom Shalala.
Yeah, classic, man. Also, in 2018, you won an Order of Australia, or awarded an Order of Australia. That would have been a crazy thing for a young hippie to think about in the early 60s, and I'm going to get a gong.
Oh, yeah, but that's right. We never ever thought, well, first of all, we never thought we'd last very long. And then we never thought we'd be on that side of things. It was always the anti-establishment side of things. And so it wasn't until, as you know, it was only a few years ago that this happened.
Yeah.
And then that got to be an extraordinary thing to happen as well. And I think that what's lovely is those awards recognize people in industries that don't necessarily get a lot of recognition by the overall populace, you know. Yeah. And it's lovely when, you know, people in our industry get pointed out as great artists or writers or guitar players or producers or whatever. And at the same time, people in, you know, local communities for all the things they do and stuff. It's just, I love it. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
But I would say that.
Yeah. Been reading your some of your bio, and there's a quote I want to just say, and it's something you said, and I quote: "Everyone is immediately 15 again. It's amazing how powerful music can take you back." Can you expand on that? I've got my own thoughts about it, but I thought it was a beautiful quote.
Well, it is. Well, thank you. But it's really imperative that that's a real rung of the way I approach things. And most of us think the same thing, because there's no way that a 65-year-old couple are ever going to look as good at the Frankston RSL as they used to look at Opus.
Yeah.
They used to be wonderful at Opus, as we all were up on stage, you know, with our tight everythings and, you know, big boots and all this stuff. However, I don't believe that any of our enthusiasm has diminished at all. So, and what's really great is that most people who are 65 or whatever and get up and do that don't give a damn what they look like.
Yeah.
Because it's not about anyone else. It's about them reliving that. And I really believe they are 15 again and going for it. If there is one great thing about particularly popular music, you know, not so much classical music, although it has its own way of doing it, but even you think about the big band era and those times, everyone would just get up and jitterbug all over the place, even if they couldn't. Yeah. Mostly they couldn't. No. But I think that's a real powerful thing about music. And it's nothing to do with us in the sense that when they're going through that trip, they're going back to when they were 15. So they're not living our lives, they're living their lives again. Yeah. So if we have a trick, it's that we can take them back there. But then they're on their own.
Now, you also have written a fantastic book, This Side of Things. Where did the title come about, This Side of Things? And have you got one little anecdote you can tell us from the book?
Oh, yes. First of all, the title is a strange one. I was watching an interview here, and I don't remember who the interviewer was, but it was one of those in-depthy kind of things, you know, on one of the major shows. And they were interviewing James Taylor, you know, whose career is longer than all of ours. And he was, you know, very generous in the way he talked about his times. And they got to the part where he had been involved in heroin and stuff. And he was quite okay with it. Yeah. You know, he'd covered it and then moved off, you know, because imagine what that's like. Yeah. And he gave it a minute or so, and then he moved off and talked about other things. And this guy would not leave it alone. And eventually, when they were about ready to stop the interview, they finished the interview, the guy tried again, you know, and James sort of stopped and looked, and he said, you know, that was a really long time ago. Yeah. And it was a different period in life, it was a different period in history. I can't explain it any better than I have. And he said, and truthfully, you know, now I look at life from this side of things. You know, and he went on about how that worked for him, and I thought, there's my title. That's my title. Thank you, James.
Fantastic. Do you still get that same buzz when you walk on stage now as you did, say, back in the 60s and 70s? Yeah. It's still, you know, get you nervous and all that sort of stuff? Or
we're not so much nervous, but you do change gears. You definitely change. I've got a bloke called George who arrives about half an hour before I go on. And he's in here,
Yeah.
and he starts to cycling up a bit. So by the time I go on stage, George is whipped me to a frenzy. And I've been using George for years and years and years. And the thing is, at my age, I'm 77 years old. If I didn't have that vibe, I wouldn't bother doing it.
Yeah.
It's not about me being able to do it or singing those songs. It's about that vibe on stage. It's about what the audience and the band and myself achieve in that hour and a half. That's the whole goal. So if George has never not turned up, incidentally, but if George and I and the band and the audience can't pull it off, then I shouldn't be doing it. And there might be a time when that'll happen, but not now.
Yeah, fantastic. So what's the immediate future hold for Brian Cadd? Is there a new album on the horizon, or?
No, I just had one.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
I just had one, and I was so proud. It went to #1 country on ARIA, which was, I've never had a country album. I've never made one, much less had one sell. So I'm very proud of that. And, obviously do some new songs from the album. I do all the hits, of course, but, I throw a couple of new ones in, which seem to be going really well. So I don't have any immediate plans, but I never say never. I was talking to Russell the other day, and Russ said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, I'm writing another album, but I don't know. Maybe I've got to stop. Maybe. And I said, truthfully, you don't have to stop writing them.
Yeah.
If it gets hard to make them, then don't make them.
Yeah.
But please write them, because that's our essence. That's what we do more than anything else.
Yeah. No, you're so true. I've been trying to get Russell to the club, but I haven't managed to do that yet. But when you speak to him, can you put a good word in for us?
He's a sneaky guy. No, it's not that. It's really that he's retired.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a bit like, I suppose, if if he goes on with you, then someone will say, "Oh, yeah, but you were just on with."
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not speaking for him, but I'm just saying it. I know it. He's having at least a year off, and he's not doing anything. Which I was out with him the other day. And he's, I'm so bored. That's it. I might have to do another couple of gigs. I said, see?
Look, we're so looking forward to seeing you at the club on Thursday, the 22nd of August. Can you tell us who will be in the band with you, and what can we expect on the night?
Well, the band's going to be, it's a lovely band that I've been using since the beginning of the album. And it's Johnny Creech on drums and Peter Robinson on guitar. What an amazing guitar player. And they are just fabulous. They're from Russell's band, which I'm very lucky now. He's retired, so no, but we played together for years and years. And then Paul Cartwright, who's a long-term bass player of mine, a great friend, and a guy called Shane O'Reilly, who is in a band called Los Ragas.
Oh,
and Shane.
Yeah.
And he's a very wonderful steel player, very much in the vein of Sneaky Pete. They play very similarly, which is not easy to do.
Yeah.
And I was in the Flying Weirdos, and Pete was a good friend. And so to find Shane, it's like a reincarnation of him. So we have a great time, lots of good singing and lots of fun. So come on down.